Bench Opinions. Three idiots with amateur analysis.
Right, welcome to another episode of Bench Opinions, everybody. You've got Dominic, Klaus, and myself on the couch, as always.
Max. Your name's not myself.
Max. I was like, the people know who I am. For those of you who do listen to our other content, we've made the executive decision that we will be exclusively talking about rugby from now on. As time's gone on, we've sort of noticed what people like and what they don't like, and it seems like no one gives a shit about what our week is like and what opinions we have about the rest of the world. That's not entirely true. There's like three or four friends and family who are on a rotation and listen to our content. So we're dropping what a week from now on. We're going to be talking exclusively about rugby, which means you're going to get so much more in-depth knowledge and understanding so that it doesn't happen again that we all predict that the Springboks are going to thump Australia. So I think that's a good place to start. I'm going to open the door to you, Dominic, who said it's going to be a rout and that the Springboks are going to walk all over Australia.
Well, I said, I think I would be surprised if the Springboks don't beat them by more than 20 points. And for not a long time, but for the start of the game, it looked like
30 minutes.
30 minutes. It looked like I think I even was in the bar that we were in.
Yeah,
we were quite intoxicated. I said, I told you guys.
You looked at me and you were like,
couple times.
But yeah.
That was when the South African fans were still singing.
Humbling. It was humbling. Look, I think it's important in these situations never to lose focus on the fact that Australia played very well. And that it was more than deserved, and there is no excuse. No matter how many excuses you see the Twitter world kind of muster up amongst the South Africans, which completely outplayed.
Yeah.
So well done, Australia, and but that changes nothing. My prediction this week will come in hot and heavy again.
We'll get to that later. Klaus, you were next. I think you had the second biggest margin of victory. What do you have to say for yourself?
Yeah, I said 8-point margin. That was my prediction, and that was obviously incorrect. I think generally Australia had our number. Like Australia as a sporting nation had our number that weekend because we also lost in the T20.
Yeah.
And then on another note, DDP, Drickus du Plessis, he also lost.
So Hamzat is not from Australia.
No,
He's
know,
not.
But surprised.
I thought he was from Darwin.
like Israel Adesanya there.
Exactly.
So all in all,
same WhatsApp group.
All in all, not a good weekend for South African sports. But I think the one shining light is it really puts the British and Irish Lions performance into perspective. I think now it's not just like Australia had a fluke. Like they are actually properly on the up and up. And as much as we don't like to lose, us as South Africans and as Springbok supporters, it is awesome to see the Wallabies seemingly back.
Yeah. I'll just quickly slide in with my formal apology because I also got it extremely wrong. But I do think maybe something, I don't know if we didn't consider it enough last week when we were making these predictions, but maybe there is something to the fact that the Australians came in a lot more battle-hardened than the Springboks did. Obviously Rassie likes to chop and change a lot, especially if those July tests aren't against top-tier opponents. So maybe it is a sort of difference whether you're coming in having played the best from the Northern Hemisphere versus having played Georgia and Italy.
There's two theories to it, right? The one is you come in battle hardened, you're used to a higher level of rugby. The other is in that higher level of rugby, you might be more injury prone. So like trying to find that balance of not risking your players. But in our case, it didn't seem to work.
The irony of it is a little bit is also that you would think if Australia really did come in the more battle-hardened, more prepared, I would have expected them getting the fast start and kind of just being a step ahead of us, and it wasn't the case. We can get into the individual moments of the game, but that's the one thing where I'm like, yeah, sure, I think they do seem more prepared and they seem like they're on an upward trajectory, and we're trying to still kind of figure things out coming off the back of those three lesser test matches. But the fact that we still started the way we did and weren't able to manage the game and see it out is a little bit scary, actually.
It goes against what we were talking about last week when it comes to altitude, and we were sort of predicting that, especially when the bomb squad comes on, that the Australians would struggle a little bit at altitude, and with the good players coming on and with the power of our bench, which I think was probably just as surprising to Russie in his post-match interview that I think he also mentioned that the Australians didn't struggle at all with the altitude, and as the score says, they obviously got better as the game progressed. It was 22-38 in the end. Let's start with the beginning of the game where the Springboks I don't think they dominated in the sense that they were all over them, but they found something that worked for them, putting a few high balls up there, a few mistakes by the Australians, and went up early. I think it was 22-0 at halftime.
22-0, yeah. No, not at halftime.
Okay.
By halftime, they'd already scored a try.
By the 30th minute or so,
the
first third of the game. Some shining lights there, though, for South Africa. Siya Kolisi, Kurtley Arendse, and
was it Andre Estes?
Andre Estes getting in with the tries.
I think the crucial. Russie said that he expected it to be decided at the breakdown, given the strength of the Wallabies and how good they are. And in order to counteract that, he picked essentially three flankers in that back row of the forward pack in Siya, Mark van Staden, and Peter Steph du Toit. Anyway, that's what he was quite vocal about. And as soon as Siya was forced off, and Marco van Staden had to very briefly after that go for the HIA, I feel like that's when you felt the game turn a little bit. And we've spoken about it off camera. I think there was a very clear lack of leadership once Siya left the pitch and once the Australians got on top of us, I felt.
Especially around ruck time.
Yeah. Which is strange because you have a lot of, I guess, what they used to call what they still call the Springbok leadership group. Obviously, Eben Etzebeth will be in that. You'd expect someone like Malcolm Marx to be in that, being a very experienced player. And then in the back line, you've got a lot of, with Jesse Creel on the pitch, there's a lot of experience there. But yes, that Siya Kolisi substitution is obviously also touted online as a sort of a big moment where usually the bench would flourish, but the bench sort of disappointed when they came on. I don't know if there was a lot of players that came on and really performed very well.
A bit of a hot take on the whole subject of the leadership team. I think we've always had a luxury in the sense of the leadership team that those guys have also been week in, week out the top performers. I think Jesse Creel, it's hard to criticize him with how well he's played over the last couple of years, but Jesse Creel was terrible, particularly in that second half, albeit on the back of a struggling team. But I wonder now, as we sort of progress and the guys start to get a little bit older, and these guys in that leadership team maybe not being able to play, because the easiest way to lead at the end of the day, let's face it, is by the way you play. I think leading by example, I think, is still the most foolproof way to lead. And I start to wonder now, I've spoken about Mbonambi a lot, more about his form for the Sharks, but something that's now spilled over, like he just hasn't been the same Mbonambi that we've had. So I'm starting to wonder now if the correlation to their performance and what they can actually do for the team on the pitch, and then the subsequent leadership qualities, if that maybe there's a gap starting to emerge now, and how one either gets them back to levels or how you start to fill the void.
I don't feel like there was. I don't feel like we should blame too much on individual performances, because I do think the likes of Mbonambi has not been informed for a while, and the fact that he's still being selected is also a bit of a question mark for myself. But I think holistically the team just psychologically gave up. At a certain point, they weren't playing as a unit anymore. They were all over the place. Individuals are trying to, and this is where I said this to you off air about Jesse Creel. I feel like Jesse Creel at one point was like, well, all systems are out of the window, and now it's just try and chase down anything I can.
Yeah.
Ran himself completely out of breath, and then was making all these like missed tackles and stuff like that. Yeah. And so the whole system broke down in that regard. And I feel like players who, in our opinion, shouldn't maybe be in the team, i.e. Mbonambi, I think they really got found lacking. But I think there's something else that's happening there. I don't know. We spoke about it off air as well. If they might have been training too hard, if maybe it is just the lack of battle-hardened sort of test matches beforehand, but they definitely weren't up to it psychologically.
Yeah.
And that definitely showed in the second half.
So let's take individual leadership out of it when we question why the game sort of went the way it went. But and this is something Nick Mallett also brought up, is your 9 and 10 of elementary and sort of getting your team to adapt to the current flow of the game. When you start to notice that the opposition is gaining a foothold in the game, your 9 and 10 have to adapt to that in the way that they play. He criticized, I think, especially Mani, for the fact that he didn't understand when to actually slow the game down and get into that attritional battle with Australia instead of keep trying to throw expansive passes and playing that A-route game. Was it a mistake by Rassie not to include a proper backup fly-half option on the bench?
I mean, hindsight's always 20/20. So yes, in hindsight, it was a mistake. But then you could also say, well, in hindsight, maybe he hasn't been coaching Mani correctly to be able to adapt to playing those conditions. The fact of the matter is the Springboks have always been physically dominant. Well, not always, but like in most of the teams that they play against, they're physically dominant. So for a guy like Mani, who plays a very like open, free-flowing rugby, it's quite easy for him to then, off the back of that, play that kind of style of rugby because you've got front foot ball. But Rob Valentini, Tuopo, all those boys, Skelton, we were dominated physically. That was the scary thing, right? We weren't even making the dominant hits. They were making the dominant hits. So we're on the back foot, and now Mani is not adapting his gameplay. Yeah. I don't think that's a lack of having a backup fly half. That's a lack of coaching and systems in place to adapt to that.
I agree. I think you're almost, I don't know, I think almost confirming what Maxi's saying in the sense that either Mani has to do it or you have to have someone on the bench that can. I think it's pretty scary that there wasn't a handbrake that was pulled at some point. I think I've seen a lot of talk about it, and I can sympathize with the view that a lot of people maybe think that the whole cult around Tony Brown ball, playing all of this, sort of the beautiful game, this attacking thing that he's trying to get out of us now is not maybe diminishing the core strengths of what we know Springbok rugby is, which is quite a defensive style of play, something a little bit more compact, managing games, and also by being able to manage games because you're fronting up. I think there's a lot of an identity crisis, maybe not crisis, crisis is a strong word, but I think there's questions around the identity of this team moving forward and in which direction do you want to go. And I think Rassie is very aspirational in wanting the Tony Browns of the world to kind of innovate and progress, but I think you have to be careful not to lose the pillars of two World Cup winning sides. And that's going to be the juggling act now at the moment.
If that's the case with Mani, then I don't think he should be selected for the team if he can't play a different style of rugby.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, you run into the same issue with Sasha and with Damian Willemse. That all three of them are very much flair front football players. It's only really Handré Pollard who has the ability, I think, to switch more into we're marshalling a game here that we're not on top of. Sasha's had the same problems playing for Western Province, for the Stormers. And Damien is, I mean, we all agree, I think, not supposed to be a fly-off option because he is a better a fullback and probably inside center than that. And then I guess Dom said it is it if you're playing expansive rugby, do you always need Handré on the bench then to just, in case things go haywire, to have him there to shore the ship up? Because I think it's tough to coach something that Handré has into something that Sasha is, for example. Because Sasha is this, I don't know, like almost like Antoine Dupont or let's say Finn Russell style player, whereas Handré Pollard is more of what Dan
Carter?
Dan Carter was. So, you've got different strengths. Handré, I don't think is the most expansive, but he can still, I don't know,
straighten
the attack, or like give the attack the attacking impetus that it needs. But he's not a flair player like a Mani or a Sasha is. So, is the mistake not rather than in just saying, okay, there needs to be the other option on the bench, rather than saying all of our players need to have the attacking and defensive abilities? Because I think another criticism that's popped up online is that Mani's defense also went completely to shit at the end, not just his attacking marshalling. I think there was one, I think the last try, maybe it was Jorgensen, but I'm not sure, but it looked like Joe Marler when Cheslin Colby stepped him. Like he just sort of froze and sat down.
One of the locks went screaming past him as well.
Yeah, and that's tough to see.
I think you touch on something very interesting, and I think this is the double-edged sword of Rassi's. It's almost like a Swiss Army knife approach a lot of the time to the way he selects players. You know, this I find the idea of selecting Sia, Peter Steph du Toit, and Marco van Staden to counter the breakdown very interesting because he says that's where we need to front up the Australians. That's where we see their biggest weakness. I like that, but sometimes I feel like maybe we're outfoxing ourselves here a little bit. And as soon as that whole idea was sort of went up in smoke because of the injuries, as you said, there's what is the plan B, and I like this whole push the envelope and try and drive innovation in the game, and you know, talking about some stuff like hybrid players in Esterhuizen, and let's see if that ever kind of progresses into anything more foolproof, or if it was just a little joke or experiment or something. But I do sometimes get a little concerned, and particularly moving forward now when we're really trying to. You know, we have to be honest with ourselves. There's aging elements of the side. I think, and there are, and there has to be new blood. And how do you bring them into a system without the fear or without the really big task of being like a Swiss Army knife in a side? And we've spoken about it before. We've spoken about the Kanan Moody's. Damien Willems is the perfect example of a Swiss Army knife player who. I think we all think we know what his best position is, but within the context of minutes and playing for the Springboks, it's not clear. You know, it hasn't come to the fore. So that's my concern around, and as I said, called it identity crisis. Is like, what kind of a team do we want to be?
Just to touch on the last point that you made with regards to like, do we have to have a Andre Pollard in there? No, because it's a bit of a struggle to fit that into our usual 6-2 split. But that's the crazy thing about this week, is we didn't even have a 6-2 split. We had a 5-3 split. And we still didn't bring in somebody who could fill in that spot.
And a lot of talk and a lot of calls about people saying that Rassi should go back to 7-1 or 6-2, and he should stick to his guns. Look, that's just what people are saying. And I think, again, hindsight's 2020. But it does feel like a little bit of a progression away from what has worked.
Yeah.
And who knows, we could be sitting here, we spoke about this off air, we could be sitting here in 3 weeks having thumped Australia and you know, won the next couple games. So
yeah,
who knows? Yeah.
That's a good thing to touch on, because you know, you were speaking about the concerns of Tony Brown ball. You were speaking about the concerns of an aging squad and trying new things. Is now not the right time to try these things? Because we are still 2 years out from a World Cup. So there is, as much as I think us as Springbok fans want to dominate the phase between World Cups as well, you know, just be sort of that team that just goes on a real sort of legacy run of not losing. Is it not the right time to maybe make these mistakes now and see if we can develop into that team? Because we did the same thing after the 2019 World Cup. You know, that was a very sort of, I don't know, like glued together approach that Rassi had to put on the fly. And then he spent the next 4 years, which was tough during COVID, sort of coming up with a new approach. And now it seems like he's coming up with a new approach for the next World Cup. Yeah. And maybe that will also just have some teething problems.
I don't want to say this coming. I don't want to say that coming out of the gates, because I think it diminishes Australia's performance. But I think if this is the perfect time for this to happen, I think in the evolution of the squad, and so from that point of view, there's a sigh of relief that it has happened now. I agree 100%. I'm a little bit critical of. No, not critical. Rassi speaks about what a big pool of players he's used. I think it was 50 over the first 3 test matches against Italy and Georgia, and. I can see that, and I think it's good. But I don't think we've bona fide bled players through those test matches. There's been bit parts. You know, you had someone like Ntlabakanya come into this test match, you know, really with his back to the wall, with very little experience. You then had someone like Chituka, for example, who was brilliant. You know, you can only beat what's in front of you in those test matches, in those minutes that he played against Italy and Georgia. Where is he? You know, I struggle to, you know, now I see that you maybe Russi's plan was to have a second team and do the whole 2-team thing. But at some point, you maybe want to see a little bit of continuity and get minutes in these legs of these new players. So I'm a little bit skeptical there as to, it's easy to sort of hang it on the wall and say, I've used 50 players. But if you pick away a little bit, it is a little bit of window dressing, I find. And there are a couple of guys in the alignment squads that I feel should get minutes and should get the opportunity to be tested in a green and gold jersey, and they haven't yet. And I think you agree there to a large degree.
I do. I think especially like Vincent Chukwuka has been playing so well, he should definitely be in the squad, at least on the bench, if anything, right? Asenati in Klabakanya was on the bench. Fortunately, Jan-Henrik Wessels, unfortunately, had to be pulled off, and that's why Bonambi then made his unfortunate appearance. But like,
Yes, Oaks are fucking hating on the Oak.
I'm not a fan of his.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't think he was the real problem. I thought.
Didn't he have 3 like missed line-out throws or something crazy?
Well, I think Malcolm's line-out throwing wasn't the best either. I think he had 60%.
Yeah, well, Malcolm's a lack of Oak. No, I'm teasing.
He's got his own beer brand, so it's fine.
Bomb Squad beer.
Yeah.
No, what I was going to say is, I this is my belief, or this is my theory, is that I think Rusty wanted to start, in his mind, he wanted to start off on the right foot, to have a pretty like veteran heavy experienced squad, get that first win, and then from there start experimenting more with other Oaks. I think that's what the plan was. It's going to be interesting to see what he does now, because plans haven't gone according to plans.
What are his options though? Like what do we? Yeah.
Well, he's a bit stifled now because he's got so many injuries.
Let's get through the injuries, because one player who he did have to step up because of Cheslin's injury was Edwil van der Merwe. He to be fair, it's not on him that this game didn't go as planned, but he unfortunately got injured. So did Sia Kolisi, Peter Steph du Toit, Kurtley Arendse. So there's a lot of new faces that need to come in. Rusty spoke about Ethan Hooker coming in. He spoke about Kanan Moody starting, and he said that although they had a team selected for the second Australia test already, after this performance, the team sort of got together, and there's some players who are not going to make that second team. So there's definitely, I don't think it's one of those sort of environments where they blame each other, but I think there would have definitely been some players who got a real talking to. I mean, we saw it in the second Chasing the Sun documentary after the Ireland loss, is that he's also not afraid to really
Lead the riot act,
lead into when the attitude hasn't been right. And I think he'll share some of the blame with this, because I don't think it's exclusively on the players. I think there's definitely something in the prep, the coaching, or the team selection that could have been better. But in the end, it's 15 players on the field who have to make the difference. Before we get into next week, maybe can we just, unless there's anything more on South African players from this week, can we just talk about a few of the Australian players and where Joe Schmidt is now?
First of all, I don't think I said it in the episode, but I heavily criticized the decision to bring O'Connor in.
Yeah.
I shared and the idea to keep Nick White on, particularly with the sort of upward moving squad coming out of the Lions tour.
Yeah.
I felt it was quite safe and didn't quite understand it. But I couldn't have been more wrong, because I think that combination. I think if you look at head-to-head battles on the field, you touched on it. That 9-10 combination makes a world of a difference. And across the 80 minutes, they were just brilliant, and they played like complete veterans. Yeah. And I think that was offset by the youngsters. Sueli had a great game again. He's phenomenal.
He's so good.
Peach, as I always say, looks like nothing, but had a great game as well. Jorgensen at the age of 20, also really, just so clinical and so. And then that
Tom Wright at the back, also killing it.
So that Australian back row, the 6, 7, 8, was monumental. Yeah. And they really, really, it's Wilson, McWright, and Hooper. It's another Hooper.
Yeah.
Tom Hooper. They were outstanding, and like you guys said, there were so many other performances that were good, but they just sort of, I think they changed the game for Australia, and I think you spoke about it in the beginning, or you mentioned it. It's great for Australian rugby. We said at the beginning of, or the end of last week's episode, that I think we all said that Australia might finish third. Do we change our prediction now, having watched what they're capable of?
You asked me an easier question.
I don't think so. I think inevitably, I do think their squad will be stretched, and I think that might lead to some issues. we haven't gone into predictions now for this week yet, but I think South Africa would have to continue in the same vein. I think we'd have to expect South Africa not getting to the levels that we previously know them at for Australia to finish above South Africa. But obviously now early doors, New Zealand look like favourites.
Well, do you think that Australia can beat New Zealand in one of the tests?
Yes.
Having watched them last weekend.
Yes.
Okay. I also think so, and I mean, I think it would be great for the Rugby Championship. It obviously would be great for South Africa also, just to give us a chance there.
Yeah.
So I think all in all, I think we Nick White and James O'Connor, game changers, and then littered across the team. They were positive performances. Their front row, I don't think dominated. I think those were the only three where you could have said, okay, they were just meh, but everyone else.
But they held the scrums.
We
didn't dominate any of the scrums. So.
A few of them went down quite easily, but nothing that you could sort of say was game changing.
I'll just say, one last thing on the Springboks is that, we often talk about the era of the All Blacks, 2011 to 2015, and are the Springboks, looking back in history in 10 years' time, will we be able to say the Springboks were in that same class?
Yeah.
And it's difficult to put them there when you see a performance like this where you have a lead and you lose it so dramatically. Not only do you lose it, but you actually get another 20 points put back on you.
Yeah.
And it's got nothing to do with the way they played, because you can just have the wrong system or you can have the wrong strategy. But the attitude and the lackluster sort of performance of it, that's not something that you saw in the All Blacks of late. And so if we want to be where everybody says that team of that era was, then that's the attitude and the psyche that needs to change. And I think that's where Rassie needs to work on.
Don't you think it was... I thought that was not necessarily like us. Coming out of the last World Cup where we had 3 immensely tight games where, especially against England, we were down and out and came back. This almost seemed like, because it's like you said, there was no moment when one noticed that Australia were getting on top that you could see the Springboks changing anything. It just sort of they tried to go harder at the plan that was failing, and that seemed like it was it just wasn't typical.
I can't be critical of Rassie to a crazy degree just because of what he's achieved, but that is another reason why I'm someone who say I encourage dropping new fish in the pond, which is the group of players. And because, in German, you've got this word called Betriebsblindheit. It's a stupid way, but it's when, Rassie keeps talking about, these guys are giving me, they're giving me exactly what I want from them, in the build up to games and in camps and all that kind of stuff. I sometimes wonder if because he's surrounded by the same guys, if that level hasn't maybe dropped a little bit and it's not as easy to see, it drop because it's the same group of guys and these impressive dudes that have achieved so much. That's why I get excited by new younger blood in the side and dudes that come in and say, hey, listen, I want to put that jersey on and kind of push and keep levels. And I personally believe that every athlete has an expiry date, and that expiry date is not... It's not like sudden and final. I believe that there's a decline and you can't blame anyone for it. And I do wonder if subliminally, if someone like whoever, I mean, Irben's hard to say, but any of that older stock of guys, if they really are able to get themselves up for these games the way they were.
I think Irben is a bad example because I think he had
that's what I mean. That's what I mean. But I mean, like we spoke about the leadership group, as a whole, that core of that side that's been there for so long, are they able to get themselves up the way they were able to get themselves up 5 years ago? And that is a question worth asking, I think.
I think at the end of the day, we're talking about hopefully a one-off blunder. This isn't something that we see consistently, so we're hoping this is just a one-time thing. And as you already rightly said, we've all got a lot of faith in Rassie. He's proven himself time and time again, and so have the players that he's choosing. It's just... should this happen in a World Cup, that's you out of the World Cup.
Yeah.
And that's something that's interesting to talk about, just purely based on that front. Is like, well, when it counts, are you gonna be able to manage it?
And I mean, a little closer to home is if that kind of performance happens in New Zealand, away to New Zealand, that could be a big score, and that also psychologically puts you back so much further. I mean, I think we will all remember that 57-0 or whatever it was.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But just to come back on what you're saying, just so that I understand it correctly, you're saying it's all good and fine that he's bled 50 players, but now you want to see more of those new players in a squad playing Australia than there were.
Consistently.
I don't. He's saying I've used 50 players, but I think if you dive into it, I don't think he's given 50 players opportunities.
Okay.
I think a lot of it's been, we'll give him a minute here, a minute there, and I think the idea is to give them minutes. But I believe that you don't achieve much by waiting or trying to play this whole game. I believe we've seen it in the past, someone like Kane and Moody bursting onto the scene, Kurtley Arendse bursting onto the scene and leading to them really lifting the level of the team. And I think it's time for similar stories to that. Edward van der Merwe, someone. So it's weird. There's certain things where I feel like he's very brave, or like I think, oh, wow, okay, that guy's come out of nowhere. But I'm talking about giving people a chance who have really consistently at the lower level, the level lower, which is the URC, which is the stage to get into the side, have brought their A game.
Then are we only talking about Vincent Chituka here? Because who else in that Georgia-Italy phase really convinced so much that you would put them in over someone who played currently?
I think the front row, I would have given the front row more minutes. New front row.
That front row a month ago was still touted as the best in world rugby. And just the fact that Ox and Malcolm Marx had a bad game simultaneously just made it impossible to gain any dominance. And then,
but that's what I mean. My question is, don't new players that bring a crazy level of hunger and like literally breathe down the neck of these dudes, doesn't that lift the side?
I understand what you're saying, but I think it's not. To bring new players in is good and fine, but to just ice old ones out because you're saying their time is up, it seems a bit too finite to me, because I think they're super conscious at the Springboks about managing minutes.
I think you're misunderstanding me. I'm saying give new guys proper opportunities, right, to strike fear and create healthy competition within the side. If you're bringing in someone for the last 10 minutes against a game in Georgia, or 15 minutes against Georgia, I don't believe that can be considered an actual opportunity to really give someone like Ox and Chair the feeling of, wow, there's another guy right behind me who wants this jersey more than me. I need to bring my A game. And that's kind of my thinking.
Then surely you do that in the Italy and Georgia games and not in a rugby championship.
I'm saying.
Right, okay.
Well, I'm saying I think it's a missed opportunity, and I think he's sold it as I've used 50 players.
Okay, again, I just thought you meant like for this particular game against Australia.
But now I think is the time, because I don't, we've lost the game against Australia.
But it's tough to bring in, if there's too many new faces and too many players that have maybe 2 or 3 caps playing in a game against Australia. You could lose by an even bigger margin just because there's no cohesion in there, and there's
no experience,
and I thought that was a bigger issue, is the fact that you didn't have a 9 and 10 who had more experience, because Kobus Reinach came on, but he's so much in the same vein as Grant Williams is, that you could almost say you're fighting the same issues here, and there's not really the old heads that can come on and just, like, if an Arges Neyman came on, Andre Pollard we've already spoken about, a Damien Dialende, he was injured, but like those are the players, if they come on, I almost think that the fact that they're so experienced is a benefit then, and they shouldn't be ice out. Bongi and Bonambi is, I think, what a lot of this is focused on and centered around, and Bongi Bonambi and Vincent Chituka are the two on the opposite end of the spectrum that I think we're most critical of currently.
Right.
I don't think he was the biggest weak point we had in that. I think Nklabakanya struggled way more because he was directly at fault for 2 of the tries, and he's a new player who was bled in those Georgia-Italy games.
Yeah, look, again, my perfect example, Jesse Creel has a shocker, right? For whatever reason, had a shocker, as many of the guys did in the team. Who is currently the guy you say at 13 is breathing down his neck to play 13, but like bona fide? Not, oh, I'd love to see Kanan Moody there or her. I think we've used to have literally 2 guys in every position.
But we struggle. We've always struggled at depth at centers, and now at hooker as
Same
well.
thing, and that's what I'm saying is like he's going to have his hand forced now. Russie's going to have his hand forced because of all the injuries, right? Off the back of this performance. So it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts now. I'm not saying wholesale changes. I'm saying the only way you really understand if a player is ready to play international rugby is by playing him at international level, right? I think they missed an opportunity against Italy and Georgia, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And now you're here. And you're going, wow, okay, hopefully this is just a small blunder. Hopefully this was just a bad day at the office. If it's not, though, I think you've missed a real trick lining up people and really elevating the whole level of the squad.
Especially at positions, as you say, where there is a lack of depth.
Of course. I mean, we haven't
been playing anybody at outside centre.
At winger, for example, we don't have problems. I mean, I don't really see a concern there. Pimpy will come in and do a great job if he really needs to. Or you do say to someone like Ethan Hooker, play on the right wing.
Yeah.
And I think, of course, that's a whole different game. But it's the same thing as, you saying, looking at options at fly half or having the ability to go, okay, wow, this game hasn't turned out the way we thought it would, which is going to happen in test match rugby a lot of the time, particularly in knockout test match rugby, and not having the ability or not having someone on the bench who could come on and or giving Mani the option or the ability to come on and say, hey, we're 15 points ahead here.
Yeah.
Pull the handbrake and go. And I think, of course, we're nitpicking here. And who knows? Like I said, you sit here in 3 weeks, but that's the one part where I'm like, I don't know if we've missed a trick a little bit.
I don't think we should harp on this too much, but I think what I would say is the Springboks have in the past been burnt. This is pre-Rassie Erasmus, when throwing young players in too soon. Corbin Bosch completely vanished from rugby, and he had a few Springboks
too soon and playing out of position.
Goosen at 10 also came and went because he got dropped in too soon. Pat Lambie was injury prone, but he also, the whole of South African rugby was almost reliant on him just because he was an up and coming talent. So I think that's also something that Rassie and them are very conscious of. Is not, I would be surprised if Klabakanya gets dropped in again, because I think I would think that he's now sheltered because he got shown up so badly, and you don't want someone sort of doubling down on that and then starting to lose faith in their own ability. So I'd be surprised if he goes again, but obviously with injuries, you never know.
But Vincent should have been there instead of Marco.
Yeah. Should we quickly dive into... No, actually, there's one more thing I want to talk about. The Australia-South Africa game is ticket pricing. We've spoken about it so many times, and this one seemed to sort of almost bite you in the face, because I think with 3 days left before the game, when you went on the ticketing website, it looked like 20% of the stadium was still available.
Yeah.
And head of SA, the CEO of SA Rugby, Ron Obelso, came out and said they're very happy with the ticket sales because they reached their goal. And that sort of screams at me that you've obviously not done something right in your pricing. If 20% of the stadium is unsold and you're claiming you're so proud of this, that means you're not catering towards the South African market, because that means you could have lowered ticket prices, completely sold out the stadium and still reached your goal. But
what do you think the goal is? Monetary?
Oh, it's only
revenue,
monetary.
Or is it like capacity?
No, he's come out. No, it's monetary. He's come out and said that he doesn't believe that ticket sales have contributed enough to Springboks' monetary gains in the past, and that they're adjusting this, and they're adjusting it according to international levels, which is...
It's ludicrous.
It's insane.
Looking at the tickets, it was 3,500 rand, which is like 175
That's
euros.
insane.
I would never, ever, ever pay that much amount of money to go watch a rugby game, even if it is the Springboks.
And that's with European buying power, 175
my point,
euros,
exactly, yeah.
Like,
I wouldn't even go to I would probably go to the finals if it was that. But I wouldn't go to an international game in Stade de France and pay 175, even if they put me on the field.
To put it into context, we're playing a third of that to watch South Africa, France at the Stade de France and Italy in Turin. So that for me just sums up where there's a complete lack of understanding, and he's just removed from reality, I think, of the day-to-day South African. And I think that stadium the problem we should have is that stadium sells out in a couple of hours and you can't get your hands on tickets.
Yeah, and add to the fact that it is Ellis Park, with the problems that we've also spoken about on another podcast, is you have
to park and ride, which costs 500 Rand each. That's another 25 euros per person.
You can't park anywhere near close by. Ellis Park used to be this fortress of the Springboks, and it's synonymous, obviously, with the Springboks because of 1995. But I don't know. I think you also have to be conscious of where a game is. Like in Cape Town, I think there is a slightly higher buying power. I don't think you should make the ticket price that expensive because obviously there is still a clear divide in South Africa between haves and have-nots. And it's easier for rich people to say, okay, I'll spend 3.5 grand on a ticket than it is for someone, I think, who's probably never gotten the chance to see the Springboks to get out there and experience it.
It still needs to be accessible to most parts of society.
The fact is, at the end of the day, we shout from all the rooftops how uniting this team is, what it does for the country and people and bringing people together. And this is exactly the opposite. You're driving a wedge between the people that can go and can't go, and you're actually undoing, let's be honest, you're undoing
the good work.
A lot of the good work that this team has done. And it's something that, and I think it's something that has to be addressed. In his defense, he did say, well, if we've made mistakes, we'll have a look at it. But I was disgusted when I saw his comments. I thought to myself, thank you. So you've essentially said, oh no, we know, and it's worked really well, and we're really happy. Thank you for that. And because it's concerning.
The last thing you want is that, because in South Africa, there's I keep mentioning this, we've said it before, the general stance to actually go watch live sports is not necessarily as high as it is in Europe. So it is much easier for South Africans to just say, I'll just watch it at home because, it's the stress of going there, park and ride, whatever. I'll just turn on the TV with Brian, we'll have the people watch at home. And you don't want sport going in that direction because the Springboks are supposed to be the one that sell out everywhere. We have that problem in the URC already when we're not getting enough people to go watch live sport, and this just doesn't foster like a general sort of like stance in people to say, yes, let's go to this live event, because it's fucking bankrupts people. So that's just something we wanted to get off our chest. Right. Let's go into briefly just Argentina, New Zealand, because I don't think any one of us watched the game at 11:50 because I think I couldn't see out of both my eyes. I was so drunk. Klaus was
eating a pizza.
Eating a pizza, and
I don't know what I was doing, but I wasn't watching the game.
You were passed out. Your girlfriend put you in an Uber and sent you home.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, did you get sent home, eh?
Yeah, I was told, listen, my friend, you've said very little in the last hour. That's strange.
Did she send you home? Oh, she stayed out.
Oh, she still went out partying, bro.
Yeah.
Yes. So you went home with the dogs or what?
No, the dogs were at a wedding.
No, never.
Oh, you dropped the dogs. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. I think Argentina versus New Zealand went pretty much according to form, how we expected. Maybe Argentina played a little bit better than we thought, but I think it was almost a 20-point margin. I think it was 41, 20,
something,
20,
yeah,
24, something like that.
I would almost say both teams played better than I thought they would. They obviously New Zealand won, but for a solid portion of the first half, or almost all of the first half, the Argentinians seemed to be like hanging in there. And then the New Zealanders just ran right. Bowden Barrett with like a chicken wing flick to the outside, and scoring with some spectacular tries. Will Jordan also running right. So New Zealand is now ranked number 1 again.
They are.
They've popped all the way back up to the top. The question is, and this is what a lot of pundits in New Zealand have been asking, is like, can we consider ourselves number 1? There's a whole bunch of factors you can go into about like them having played a B France team. Yeah. That's how they were able to accumulate a lot of points and credit points getting up. And we all know the rankings are a little bit weird and it's not too accurate. Lots of the pundits sort of saying like, once we beat South Africa, if we beat South Africa, then we can say, cool, we're on top. So that's very sweet of them to say that. We'll take it. It's the only thing we've got going for us
I don't
this
think
week.
the Irish and the French will agree, but
Yeah, but they don't really matter.
it's not URC season, so
But the attacking shape of New Zealand looked pretty menacing for sure, and that does give me a little bit of worry.
yeah. Right. Predictions for the upcoming week. Are we doubling down here?
So Dominic's going to say by 40 this time, eh?
No one comes to Cape Town.
No one leaves Cape Town alive.
I expect a rectifying job from Rassie. I think we'll make amends, and I don't think it'll be by a lot.
Right.
I think we'll learn from the mistakes of this over-expansive game and swearing by, like I said, the Tony Brown method, or whatever you want to call it. I predict Andre to start. I know Chlappies is injured, so he's not going to come in. So maybe a Grant Williams,
I thought he was supposed to come in. I thought
he was, but he's injured. He's not going to be ready for the game. I'm a little bit concerned again by this whole Swiss Army knife thing. I hope Rassie doesn't sort of try to plug the gaps through injury with like players that usually don't play in those positions. I would prefer to see an Ethan Hooker come in as a bona fide winger playing at wing, But let's see. But I think it'll be quite measured. Damage control, and I think sort of 12 points to South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he does with all the injuries, of course.
There are some players coming back.
But what is it? Dialende and Cheslin, right? So there's one winger for us. Then the other question is, obviously, is Mapimpi going to step in, or is Ethan Hooker going to go out to the outside? Also, fullback is a question. I don't think Damian Williamson had a good game. I don't think he should be playing at full.
I mean, he came on very late and didn't really get a great chance to impact the game. And Apelele Fassi beforehand wasn't sterling either. So
wasn't the weekend special?
No, I'm obviously a loyalist to him. So, but I wouldn't have pinned the blame on him. He came on so late, and just like in a game like that, his playing style is not gonna matter because the Australians were all over us. So.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be the interesting thing. Sorry, it's going to be interesting to see. There's obviously a pecking order, and in a lot of the positions slowly starting to emerge, and then to see if Rassie identifies someone as, okay, well, I thought you were ahead, but now you're going to be dropped.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see those individuals' positions and how he approaches those.
We've spoken about him so much tonight that I do hope that Vincent Sushuka makes an appearance.
I think he
really.
plays.
You think you will?
I think with Sia injured, I think
Sia
he comes
out
into the side.
With what's the final verdict on Marco van Staden?
No, he's going to play.
Is he going to play? Or he's
fit.
available
He's
to
fit.
play? Okay.
Yeah.
Or who's Peter Steff? Sorry, Peter Steff was the one who's
Peter
out.
Steff has got a concussion.
Peter Steff's out, concussion. So there's two big names there that get dropped. I think Vincent Sushuka has been proving himself, albeit the Italian and Georgia sides. But I think
I didn't even think he was in the squad named for the Rugby Championship.
No, he's in there.
They're gonna call him up there.
I think they're going to call him up.
Right.
Let's go with Springboks by 20.
Yes.
I think. Look, as we said earlier on,
see that coming.
As we said earlier on, I think yes, there were individual performances that were weak, but for me, the overall sort of blemish on the performance was the psyche.
Yeah,
and I think that is something that can be rectified, and quickly.
Right. I'm worried about this game because of the injuries and the way we played.
Rightfully so.
I'm a dumbass. No, I'm joking. Idiot.
I don't think I can go as far as picking Australia to win because
doesn't sit well with you, hey?
And also
because I'm rank biased. No kidding.
But I think it's gonna be Springboks by 4.
Tight.
I think it's gonna be tight. I think the Australians are good, and I don't know. I think they had our number.
What's the weather saying for Cape Town, eh? Also a big factor.
Very, very big factor. Maybe quickly to finish up, do Argentina have a chance to beat New Zealand?
mean, they always have a chance.
Yeah.
It's just how slim or
They've
great
beaten
it is.
Australia 3 times since 2020, but it was all in New Zealand. Sorry, New Zealand. They beat New Zealand. It was 3 times, but it was all in New Zealand.
Yeah, I saw that stat come up as well, and I was like, Jesus, that's actually quite an impressive stat.
Because that Argentinian crowd is very boisterous, but it seems to do them no favors.
No, I mean, it's the typical Latin emotions that get a hold of them there, where it's like burning hot, lose control.
So what got a hold of the South Africans? Typical South African
typical South African brandewyn in the system. Beklei.
All right, I think let's go through it quickly. I'm gonna say New Zealand by 20 again.
I think it's going to be tighter. I think it's going to be New Zealand by 6.
Okay.
Well, I said Argentina by 3 the last time. That was just to kind of show people that we don't just flow with the ocean, you know. But I think, man, I don't know.
God, we really.
I think New Zealand will get the job done. Yeah, I think, and I don't think it'll be by as much. I think the Argentinians will put up a good fight, but maybe by 10, 15 points.
I think after next weekend, so next week's episode, we can talk a little bit more about Rugby Championship standings after 2 games. Who's really the favorite? Who's going in what? Because if we do end up winning against Australia, things are looking different. If we lose again to Australia, then next week's episode we will nickname Crisis.
Sure.
Yeah. Right. I think that's it. Unless you guys have anything else you want to add.
One last thing. The Ladies Rugby World Cup is starting this week.
Oh, yeah.
So good luck to everybody involved there. Obviously,
not everyone.
Backing the Springbok ladies.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can do us proud.
Yeah. They've been playing well recently. So hopefully they put... I don't think they're going to win it, but it would be nice for them to put a few good performances together.
Yeah. If they can get out to the knockout stages or something like that, that would be amazing.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it for this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
If you disagree with anything we said, comment below.
I see some Okas said now we need to get microphone stands. I don't know where you think this money is coming from for this podcast. Where must I put them?
Also, why?
He says it's a joke that we're holding these microphones.
But thank you for commenting.
Yeah, but I think it was on TikTok.
Okay.
Right. Thanks for listening.
We'll
Thanks
see you
for
next
tuning
week
in.
with no microphone stands.
Subscribe. Cheers.